almost like it has come full circle. So there's, I mean, so when you were talking about the elites, right, holding the flag, that's got to be where the word elitism comes from too, right? And so the elitists, the one in front with the flag, um, signaling where to go, it does feel like eventually they march around the earth and they're behind. I mean, it does feel like that's where we have to be careful with leadership
True.
is getting so far ahead that we are trailing.
Well, and I
And
think
I think
it's
we might be doing that with words.
true. And I would say, and you just, I think it was more later the leap went to hoplites. And so that was more the derivation, not elite. And I'm
Oh,
not a English major, so
I
I
don't
will,
know either. Just reminded me of that.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
But I
not
do
an,
think
I'm
the
not
point
an elite
is,
grammatician,
well,
whatever.
and so one of the things that I had seen both when the bioterrorism program happened and what motivated to get my PhD was how minority perspectives are shut down when people are trying to make sense of what's going on. And you can think about the NASA Challenger accident, for example. There were a few engineers that said, I'm not sure we should launch because these are colder temperatures and everything like that, and they got shut down.
Mhm.
And so I think, again, going back to Carmen's view of it's creating that space in which a weak signal can be communicated and be heard and be considered. And the challenge is how do you discern the weak signal that actually has merits versus the interesting idea, but there's actually no data there. But I agree with you that you don't want to shut down the weak signals.
No, and
So
question for,
creating is too strong a verb there.
yeah.
Okay.
It's you can't create the space. You can grow the space.
You can nurture.
You can nurture the space, but you definitely, for my, taste, you want a term that is as sort of unmechanical and uninstrumental as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah,
But
it's the yin yang.
that's the crazy place I've ended up in. And
That's perfectly fine.
Eh,
And I would say, I'll give I mean,
Wait,
I
wait,
like what
David,
you said.
before you do, I'm gonna short circuit this because
Sure.
I have this burning question that I
Okay.
think would be really interesting, which is, can you give an example of a time in which you wish that you had heard a weak signal as a leader, but that you didn't? And you look back later and you're like, I didn't hear that.
Good question. Um, I mean, I think it happens. It happens every day, to be candid. And so oftentimes it's whether or not you are able to later see that the environment was enforcing that. But I think that happens every day. And if anything, you know, my wife has also observed. She says you ruminate a lot on past decisions, and I'm like, well, that's partly because I want to reflect to see was I attentive in the moment. And how do I know I was attentive in the moment? Because you're taking in so many inputs and you're trying to make sense. But yes, I would say without giving details, I've been quietly working behind the scenes on a space company and trying to help bring it out of receivership. And there were some weak signals that possibly one of the investors probably wasn't the right investor. But at the time, I didn't hear that signal until later it was proven. But yes, I would give that. Um, I will I will say with love to Carmen's part about creating. I once challenged my father because my rebellion when I went off to middle school and high school and then college was to go into science, whereas he was a minister. I said, are weddings just a way of the church reminding you who's in charge? Because who's talking? It's the minister, not the couple for the most part, and who's up, and everything like that. And he said it might be for some churches. It might be some people use that just to remind you about authority and power. But he says that he saw, and again, I get your point about creative being mechanical. He said it's about creating a space because at some time that couple is going to have arguments, disagreements, something in which they need something larger than themselves to call upon. And so there's a wonderful book. It's by the same person, I'm blanking on his name, that did Everything I Need to Know I Already Learned in Kindergarten. He also does on ceremonies. And he says that through the rituals and patterns of ceremonies, we can, and he does use the word create, we can create things that people then can call upon when they need a force stronger than themselves to get through whatever they're weathering. And so when I'm talking about creation, it's really the idea that it's not reminding authority, it's not reminding power. It's about something that when you're trying to get through that really hard time together, that you can call upon and remember.